Public Works Director always gives the most thrilling topics to discuss. But it is,
Could be soon.
it could be. This is something that we really need to pay close attention to. Because part of those huge assets that Adam was just telling us about resides in our streets. And we've got huge investments out there, and we need to make sure that we're managing them properly. And y'all have done a good job of funding the rehab and overlay of streets, but you think we need to take a step further and paint a little more clear picture of what the future liability is, so you kind of know how you're doing in meeting future needs of that. So Al's going to walk us through this and introduce someone that will help us with that.
I will. I appreciate the opportunity. My years in the military, as well in the cities that I've been in, have found that we've been kind of deficient in the way that we do the analysis on what we need to do to which streets when we need to do that. Years ago, we didn't have any technology that allowed us to do it. It was basically, I would drive out, or my staff would drive out, we'd look at the street, and we would say, okay, this one's worse than this one. And if I remembered by the time I got to the other side of town, which was really the worst one, I would get them in the right order. Well, thank goodness the technology has improved, and I found this when I was, and since I've been in Texas, I actually used this, and I used it in McKinney, and it allowed me to not only look at the drivability of our streets, but the structural analysis of our streets to give us an opportunity to determine how do we spend the money we have. Are we spending enough money to do what we need to do? If you note, and I think I mentioned this since I've been here, the infrastructure report card across the nation, you know, we're rated, I mean, we get a D, D minus, F in some areas between water, sewer, bridges, and streets. And what happens if we don't start maintaining our streets at a certain level, the line goes this way versus staying flat or improving. And so I'm hopefully tonight you'll get an opportunity to see somebody that can actually talk us through the system that I've become familiar with. And I've asked Zach Thomason to actually come in from IMS to do the presentation. I told him he had no more than 10 minutes and then 5 minutes of questions that he has. And so he knows how much time he's got. But I do appreciate.
That time dinner is ready, so it's pretty fresh.
You are up against the clock, Zach.
I am.
So Zach, it's all yours.
Perfect. All right, pavement management. I promise not to bore you to death. But it's important stuff. And you folks, Hal, you've set me up perfectly talking about performance curves. I'm going to simplify it a bit. Pavement management is extremely important, and I'm going to run you through why we do it. Let me get the remote to work there first. Perfect. I'm going to run you through what it is, why we do it, and what the benefit of it is in the long term. So up there you can see a textbook definition of what pavement management is. Pavement management is simply the process of analyzing pavement condition data in an effort to achieve maximum benefits from available funds. You look it up, that's what you find. In reality, what that really means is it's a process of picking winners and losers and doing it in a defensible manner. Now, when I say winners and losers, it means picking streets that are rehabbed and the ones that are not. Because at the end of the day, we only have X amount of dollars to spend on the streets, and we want to do that in the most efficient manner possible. That's the process of pavement management. Now, why do we do pavement management? Quite simply, well, Dan, the answer is very simple. Pavement management is incredibly important because maintaining your roads is the cheaper solution. You will maximize your return of every dollar spent if you maintain your roads. The simplest analogy I can give you is 99% of us drive vehicles and we maintain them. We change the oil in our cars, we change the brakes in our cars, and we do that not because we like to, or we like to spend the 30 bucks on the oil change, but it extends the life of our vehicle, and it costs less over the life of the vehicle as well. Pavements are no different. You have to maintain them. You have to do proper treatments on the roads as well. So long gone are the days of letting the pavement, or paving a road, letting the pavement deteriorate, all the way down to reconstruction and then building a new road. That is extremely costly and certainly not effective when it comes to maximizing funds. You can see there on that graph, that red line is what Hal was alluding to. So that's what we call a pavement performance curve. That is the life of a roadway throughout time. And you can see it has a steep portion to that curve. That's where the roads start deteriorating the fastest. And quite simply, you can see there up at the top, if we spend $1 now on the pavements, it will keep us and prevent us from spending $8 later. So the reality is simple. Spend $1 now or spend $8 later. So maintaining pavements is extremely important. Let's review the pavement condition index real quick. When Hal or folks talk about pavement condition scores, they generally say, well, oops, went forward too far. They generally use the term PCI, and that stands for pavement condition index. So what you see there is that red line, which is the performance curve, and at the bottom there, that's the pavement over time. And you can see that certain treatments are done at certain times on the roadways. This is important. We want to make sure we're doing an adequate treatment at the right time to maximize benefit, maximize the life of the road. And you can see that there. I won't go through them all, but right in the middle you see the word good. And good equals surface treatments with localized repairs, thin overlays, maybe local panel replacements. The point is simple. If you have a road that scores between a 30 and 40 on the PCI scale, it's going to require a thick overlay. Putting a surface treatment on it wouldn't be adequate, and it would be a waste of funds. So doing things at the right time is incredibly important. But what does that look like? So what we have here is an example of what PCI scores look like. This is an adjacent city that will remain unnamed, but rhymes with Weatherford. So you have these roadways. These are the very poor roadways that score anywhere between a 0 and a 30 on the PCI scale. 0 is horrible condition. 100 is perfect, like new condition. Everybody has these roads. Everybody has very poor categories. These are the roads that, quite frankly, are tired. They are done. They've had a long life, and they need reconstruction. They have structural failures, rutting, excessive cracking, and the important part here is that they are way past the point of overlay-based rehabilitation, meaning these roads are reconstructs. If you put an overlay on these roads, it's not the proper time. They're past that point. It will do nothing for these roads. Safety also becomes a concern when the PCI is very low. Let's jump forward a bit and see what the PCI looks like in the fair category. These streets are okay. They rank from a 50 to 60. They're not great, but they're good. They have some cracking issues, very few base failures, but they have optimum timing for a thin to moderate overlay. And the reason we say optimum timing is because there's a cost benefit to attacking these roads now. If we let these roads deteriorate any further, they're going to fall into the next treatment category, which is far costlier than the category they're in. So if we can apply a thin to moderate overlay, we are going to see a large return on our investment by extending the life of the road. And of course, everybody knows what a good road looks like, but I didn't want to beat up on Weatherford too much. These are like new condition roads. We have them. They're in great shape. They'll provide good service for 5 to 10 years without touching them. And you do crack sealing, joint seals, things like that. Tools to rate the streets. How do we do it these days? What you see there is a laser road surface tester. So that's a piece of equipment that has lasers, cameras, GPS technology on it. And its job is literally to drive the roads and assess the condition of each roadway in the city. So not only does it count cracks and measure cracks by width and depth, but it assesses things like rutting, roughness of the road, transverse cracking, patching and potholes, all of these different distresses that we see on the roadway. It is all of that data that is then used to calculate that PCI score. What condition is each street in?
What happens if you're on a long street and it's great up here, but it gets worse down here? So how do you do that PCI on that one if it changes in the way you travel?
That's a great question. Generally, most cities at the GIS level will have their pavement segments on a block-to-block basis. I would imagine it's probably going to be very similar with Euless. So the data is collected on block-to-block levels in that respect. So you have small segments of data, very detailed data, that can be used to analyze the results. So it doesn't just get aggregated into a huge 5-mile section of road, which would be harmful because you could have a horrible section of road and a great section of road in there too. So we have a lot of detailed data that we use at the block-to-block level. This is an example of what the results look like at the end of the day. You're able to plot the PCI condition of each road on a map or in Google Earth, and you can see what the condition of the road looks like. Green is good, red is bad. That's where we're starting to get to the end result of assessing the condition of the roads. Now, one of the things that Hal's going to be interested in is not only that picture with the map and the condition results on it, but this graph is a direct representation of the data that was used on that map. So we can see at the bottom, we have the pavement condition score using descriptive terms. Very poor, poor, marginal, fair, and at the very end there, to explain the graph very simply, you see very poor. And according to the chart, the very poor roads account for 6% of this agency's particular, or this agency's very poor roads, 6% of the network. This is important. This is going to tell the public works folks in the city what the backlog is in the city. How much reconstructs do we have currently within the city? What is that deficit? Also, a good point on this graph too is they have a lot of good roads, and that's fantastic. It tells us, one, they've been maintaining their roads, and two, there's been development within this particular agency. But it also allows us to look forward and to look into the future and know that we've got a lot of good roads that are going to be coming due for maintenance, that are going to need treatment, or else they're going to start deteriorating very fast. This is probably the most important slide. So if you remember anything, remember this slide right here. This is the results you want to see at the end of the day. This answers the big ticket question, how much money do we need to fund our streets properly? Are we funding them properly? So what you can see here, this agency, we did a couple of budget scenarios. The top red line is just simply a fix-all. If we had a blank check, what would it cost to rehab every road in the city? We do that as engineers simply because we need a ceiling. We need to see what the deficit is in the city. The bottom line is to do nothing. What happens if we don't spend any money on our roadway network? Now, the important one here is that yellow line in the middle. It looks almost straight. It's almost perfectly straight. That's a steady state analysis. That means that is what the city needs to maintain the status quo of their network. Maintain the PCI that they have and maintain the backlog of work that they have. Now, in this case, that agency, that number was 1.4 million. That's what they needed to maintain the network. Unfortunately, the blue line, which is 663,000, is the budget that they were appropriating to the pavements. So we can see after analyzing the data and doing the analysis that if they keep spending the same level of funding that they are, the PCI is going to continue to drop and the backlog of work is going to continue to increase. So this is an important step in the analysis to determine where are we at, where are the pavements at.
Is this the budget on a yearly basis?
Correct. Yes, it's done on an annual basis. Generally, when you do pavement management assessments, you create a 5 to 10 year pavement management plan. And that identifies which roadways are going to be done, why they're selected, and what funding is needed in each year to do that. So, real quickly, I'm going to run through this. The question always comes up, especially in pavement management. We have limited funds. If we had a blank check, this would be a very easy job. Fix everything. But people always ask, why did you select Road A over Road B? Road B looks worse, yet you still selected Road A. So I just want to show you a few examples here. Avenue A. The PCI score on this road was 59. The structural index is simply an assessment of the subgrade condition. So everything that's underneath the road. The condition of everything you can't see was a 42. This road was selected for treatment. Now, it didn't look too bad on top, but it was selected because it cannot be deferred. It is critical. That structural index, that score is very low. And that means it's a weak pavement, and it is going to deteriorate rapidly. So if we don't touch it now, it's going to be very costly 2 years from now, and it's going to cost a lot more if we do not. So the return on it is worth touching it now. Now, Avenue B had a pavement condition rating of 63, so very close to Avenue A, but a structural index of 78. This road was deferred. It was not selected. And the reason is simple. It was not a critical roadway. It was deemed to have high strength. That structural index was key there. This means whoever designed the road, whoever built the road, whoever inspected the road did a very good job. It is a solid road, and it is not going to deteriorate very rapidly. So you can start using this information to determine how do we best need to spend the money that we have on the pavement network? Where do we need to apply those funds? And lastly, this is always a funny one. There's no beating around it. That is an ugly road. That's not Weatherford, by the way. But that road is done. That's a tired road, but it wasn't selected. And the reason for this is simple. This particular agency had limited funding, and they were struggling with where to apply funds and where not to apply funds. This road fell into a total reconstruction. Now the reality is there's no benefit in doing it now as opposed to 3 or 4 years from now. It's not going to get any costlier. The reconstruct is a reconstruct at this point. So for them, in that particular year, they decided, let's defer this a few years and apply those funds elsewhere on those critical roads that we know are going to start costing more if we don't select them now. So there is no one-size-fits-all in pavement management. It's always a city-by-city basis. It's based on the condition of the network you have and the available funding. Last slide here real quick. This one looks complicated. I'm going to simplify it real quick here. This slide simply illustrates the rehab needs and the priorities within a particular agency. So what you see here, every red dot on this graph represents a road that you saw on that map, that color-coded map. So every red dot is a road. And all over that graph there, you see different treatment types: thick overlays, surface treatments, full reconstructions. But the question remains, we decide which one to do and when. And that's the whole process of the analysis. So for this particular agency, priority number 1 was the thick overlays. And it was the thick overlays because it was deemed to have the highest cost-benefit ratio. Meaning, if we don't attack some of those roadways in that category, the cost of them falling into partial reconstructions is huge. So we need to attack a few of those first. Second priority on this one was partial reconstructions for the same reason. The cost of deferment and those falling into full reconstructions is a large number. So the benefit far exceeded any of the other treatments. The third priority jumps all the way to the other spectrum of the graph. This is where we start attacking some of the good roads, and we start doing surface treatments on roads, micro seals and crack sealing and slurry seals and things like that. Those roads, especially with this agency, you saw they had a large network of good roads. We've got to keep them good. Otherwise, they're going to cost a lot of money in 10, 15, 20 years. Fourth and fifth priorities was thin overlays. And of course, the sixth priority was full reconstruction. Now, this is an example of what one city did. But like I said, there's no one-size-fits-all when it comes to pavement management. It is dependent on city priorities as well, funding, and the current condition. So this is something that is developed custom for Euless. It's a custom application for Euless in regards to industry standards. Questions?
What's your thought? I've had several different pavement companies, and I've read up on it a little bit. They're starting to say that if after you do your overlay, if you start seal coating on a regular basis, it'll keep the moisture in the pavement, and basically they're saying you will not have deterioration. That you can get to that point, if you get in the first few years it's down, that seal coating, I don't know how much I buy into this, but I've read more and more on this, and more of the pavement companies are talking about this, that if you do a constant, or not constant, but a regular application of the seal coat, it's like hand lotion, getting rid of cracked skin.
That is true. So, for instance, if we go back to, I think it was the good roadway that I showed you, that was recently paved.
Right.
Generally, in terms of pavement engineering, you won't need to touch that for 5 to 10 years. You're going to get some life out of it. But you do need to start applying maintenance activities. So if you do put some sort of a seal on top in that 5 to 10 year period, that is absolutely what you need to do. It's critical to keep the life of the road extended, to capture that cost benefit on each road. So you got to do it. I don't know about right after.
Well,
pavement is
they weren't
laid.
necessarily saying right after, they were saying that the problem is people wait for the end of the line, the 10 year,
Correct.
and then try and do something, and it's too late then.
If you wait too long, it's too late.
That's why we crack seal, and that's why we put a thin slurry seal on them to actually rejuvenate the asphalt that's in there. But if you wait too long, it's a waste of your effort and time. and
Yep,
money.
exactly. Exactly.
Talk a little bit about the structural piece of how you actually do the structural analysis of what you can't see.
The structural piece is actually one of the most important aspects of pavement management. It tells you what's underneath the road. It's the subbase. That's the foundation that the road sits on, and the condition of that is critical. So we use a piece of equipment called a Dynaflect, or an FWD that literally thumps the road. Not very hard, doesn't shake any windows or anything like that, but it thumps the road and measures the response of the road through all this thumping. And that tells us literally how strong is the road, what is the condition of the pavement. That's very important information, because not only does it allow us to assess the subgrade, but it becomes a good candidate for deferment. So if we do have limited funds, we can tell which roadways are built well. And if they're built well, they're not going to deteriorate very fast, which means those become good candidates to defer so we can apply funds elsewhere.
I'm assuming these right here, seal coat's not going to really do much for that.
There's a lot of moisture in that bottom.
That's right, yeah.
That was a post-hurricane survey.
Other questions for Zach? Thanks, Zach, I appreciate it.
No, thank you for having me.
Thank
So
you.
why are we talking about this now?
Pardon?
Why are we talking about this?
We're talking about this now because we think that we can actually put out a request for proposal and get this data back before we go through our budget process this summer.
That'd be
Do
excellent.
we use that machine, do you borrow that machine to go through all the cities?
No, ma'am, they own that machine, or whoever we hire will have a machine like this, and it takes about a week or two
City the size of Euless take about a week to do the full field surveys, yep.
to do the field surveys, and then you actually pay for the analysis and the computers and all that stuff. And then the data that we get would tie into our system that
We get a really good long-term
Yeah.
capital plan for our students.
That would be great.
That's the whole purpose.
Yep.
This gives us a baseline, and then we establish where we go from here. And if I had my way, periodically, we would update this over the 5, 10, 15 years, the 30 years I'm here, or whatever. And if you believe that, I got some swampland right there. But,
We believe we need to move forward with this, with the introduction, so that when you see the contract come forward, it is rather expensive, but it's really critical. And a lot of what they face is the people that will call and say they got ugly streets, and particularly right after the crack season. I mean, one of the earliest slides he showed was one of the better streets. You could see the crack season. I mean, that's indication of a good, healthy street, but people think it's ugly, and so they want us to.
Well, your car doesn't care.
But it allows us to rely on something a little more objective than you got a good street. So we don't want to be wasting resources by, overlaying perfectly good streets that people just think are ugly. Rely on some scientific data. So that's the purpose, and probably in the next 2-3 months, you'll see a contract. Well, won't be that long. In a few weeks, you will see a contract involving existing funds, maintenance funds, that we will apply to you to try to prepare you for the upcoming budget, to make sure that we're spending adequate funds and we're spending what we should.
Will we be able to include streets in gated neighborhoods, even though they're not Euless' streets to repair, so that at least there's that same baseline data?
they weren't in the budget. Those are really private and maintained.
It would be like this someone's driveway. We could dance around with it. Now, I guess
Now, we could, if they came to us and said, we're willing to pay the difference, we could do it and whoever we issue the contract to, I keep going back here, I don't know that he'll get it. But if, we could do that, we could say it'll cost you $4,000 to get your streets done the analysis.
Yeah, it's-
That could be
I
done.
mean, it's not unlike when we reconstructed the street, in Nash Lane particularly, and they have some on column. In fact, I know of one homeowner down there that is going to want to, do a little something different on their drive, or the street on Ash, a homeowner on Ash that added a driveway lanes. While the contractor was out there mobilized, they gave him a very good price, but it's a direct payment to the contractor. Does that make sense to your business?
Yeah, absolutely. Yep. Yeah.
We don't have
Sure
policy,
does.
that may be something off the road, certainly.
I have a question that's not directly related to this, but we have never allowed speed bumps to be installed on our streets. What about the private streets? Can they have speed bumps?
I think there are a few on the private streets.
I don't think we,
Not encouraged.
we don't have no policy, or, I guess, the fire, on a fire lane now, there's some, you would have something put on that, I guess.
Up that little truck.
What is the process? I know somebody who's going to try to do it.
I think first thing is come in and talk with the engineering and public works and fire department. I mean, I know we have private parking lots, particularly in apartment communities that have to surround. And we do not try to influence what's put there, the pump instead of the bump.
But there's also tables, speed tables, which are much more gradual and wider that could be used. But I think the policy, from what I'm being told, is that speed humps and bumps on public streets are not.
Well, okay, that's,
That was quite a build-up.
you got 10 minutes over your time.
Oh, Zach, you're fired.
Just come on the project. Yeah, exactly.
So, maybe did you choose this winter's name?
Thank you. Thank you.
You did, I'm sure. We'll eat it, then we'll pass it over. Let's take a vote.